Hey guys, tonight we drift gently into a quieter corner of Greek mythology, where the marriages of goddesses don't shout with thunderous drama, but whisper secrets that most miss secrets that once noticed, you probably won't be able to unsee. The marriages of Greek goddesses start with a peculiar charm, an allure that draws gods and mortals alike into unions filled with shimmering hope, glittering promises, and yet, beneath all that beauty, an undercurrent of tension that quietly unravels over time. It's a curious paradox, these divine women, embodiments of power, beauty, wisdom, and wildness, seemed made for epic tales, yet their relationships rarely settled into peaceful, lasting harmony. Instead, their marriages often flicker with jealousy, conflict, or complete absence of partnership. This story doesn't shout, it hides. It waits, and it reveals something we may not want to remember about love, power, and the often tangled human emotions projected onto these divine figures. You probably won't survive this subtle reality check, but it's worth leaning into that soft glow of truth. You trudge through the golden halls of Mount Olympus, smelling faint traces of ambrosia mixed with an ever-present tension in the air, like the charged calm before a storm. Here, marriages among the gods were far from the perfect fairy tales of wedding bells and eternal bliss. They were complex political alliances, reflections of cosmic balance, and sometimes mere acts of survival. Think about it, these goddesses were not just partners. They were symbols, forces of nature, and pawns in a divine chess game. So, their marriages started with charm, a kind of magnetic pull born from beauty, strength, or divine power. But beneath that was a complicated dance of desire, control, and destiny. Hera, often called the goddess of marriage herself, was ironically the one whose own marriage to Zeus was the source of some of the most infamous domestic chaos in mythology. Her initial attraction to Zeus was no small matter. He was the king of the gods, powerful beyond imagining, and her choice was as much political as it was personal. Historians still argue whether Hera's constant jealousy was a symptom of insecurity or a calculated expression of power. What's certain is that her marriage was less about harmony and more about control, suspicion, and retribution. She embodied the paradox of marriage, a sacred bond laced with suspicion and rivalry. Her jealousy was legendary, and it was not just personal. It shaped many myths where she punished Zeus's lovers and their offspring, setting off cascades of divine vendettas that echoed throughout the ages. Meanwhile, Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, spun her own web of complicated romantic escapades. Her marriages were less about commitment, and more about the chaotic passions that love can ignite. She was married to Hephaestus, the god of the forge, a match that, on paper, made sense, blending beauty with craftsmanship, yet she was famously unfaithful, indulging in affairs with gods like Ares and mortals like Adonis. This contrast reveals a curious detail often overlooked. Aphrodite's love was dangerous and disruptive, reflecting the unpredictable nature of desire itself. It's a reminder that love is not always a quiet river, but often a wild storm. You might chuckle quietly to yourself, imagining the smoke rising from Hephaestus's forge, not just from fire, but from his simmering anger. Demeter, goddess of the harvest and maternal love, offers a softer yet equally complex perspective on divine relationships. Her marriage, or rather her union with Zeus, is often overshadowed by her overwhelming devotion to her daughter Persephone. This maternal bond literally reshaped the world. It explains the seasons, with Persephone's annual descent to and return from the underworld, mirroring the cycles of growth and decay. Yet, Demeter's focus on her daughter often left her marital relationship in the shadows. This dynamic introduces a quirky tidbit. Some myths suggest that Demeter's primary loyalty was not to her husband, but to motherhood itself, challenging the conventional idea that marriage should always be the center of a goddess's life. It's a reminder of the shifting priorities even among divine beings. Artemis, goddess of the hunt and wild nature, took a different path altogether. She famously vowed never to marry, dedicating herself to chastity and independence. This decision complicates the usual story of goddess marriages, showing that some divine women rejected the institution altogether. Her choice echoes a fascinating fringe idea in mythology that autonomy and self-determination could be divine qualities. even if they placed her outside the traditional marital framework. Artemis roams the wilderness, untouched by romantic entanglements, a figure of fierce independence that challenges the notion that marriage is the ultimate destiny for goddesses. You might find a quiet amusement in picturing her darting through ancient forests, arrows poised, utterly unconcerned by Cupid's antics. Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, shares this detachment. She never married, embodying a unique combination of intellect, strategy, and a certain emotional reserve. Athena's virginity is less about chastity and more about her role as a warrior and strategist. Her unmarried state symbolizes a dedication to wisdom and city governance rather than domestic life. This brings up an ongoing scholarly debate. Was Athena's refusal to marry a statement of female empowerment, or was it a reflection of ancient ideals about what women should be? Either way, her presence in the pantheon offers a compelling counterpoint to the more romantic or maternal roles of other goddesses. Then there's Persephone, the queen of the underworld, whose marriage to Hades is fraught with tension and duality. Her story is one of transition between life and death, light and darkness, freedom and captivity. Persephone's marriage was famously a kidnapping, but it's more than that. It's a narrative about divided worlds and conflicting identities. Historians still argue whether her union represents a willing partnership or a tragic loss of autonomy. Her dual existence between the underworld and the earth above makes her marriage a complex symbol of transformation and seasonal cycles. Hestia, goddess of the hearth and home, chose a quiet path. She famously relinquished her claim to marriage and romantic drama to maintain the sacred fire of Olympus, symbolizing stability and peace. Hestia's role offers an intriguing perspective. Not every goddess was caught in the web of marital turmoil. She embodies the hearth's comforting glow, an anchor in the divine household. This choice highlights that marriage was not a universal expectation for goddesses, and sometimes abstaining from marriage was a powerful statement in itself. Meanwhile, Zeus's infidelities cast long shadows over these divine marriages. His many affairs with both goddesses and mortals ignited jealousy and conflict, not only among the gods, but also affecting mortal tales and moral lessons. These divine scandals served as cautionary tales and political allegories, reflecting the patriarchal dynamics of ancient Greece. The repercussions of Zeus's wanderings remind you that even the king of gods was not immune to the messy realities of love and power. The marriages of these goddesses were more than personal affairs. They shaped myths that influenced human beliefs and morals. Divine jealousy, infidelity, and maternal devotion reflected and reinforced ideas about marriage, power, and gender roles in ancient society. As you settle deeper into this story, you realize these myths weren't just entertainment. They were a lens through which ancient people tried to understand the chaos and beauty of human relationships. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, feel free to share your location and local time in the comments below. It's always fun to see where we're all drifting together. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You remember Hera's story, don't you? The goddess of marriage whose own union with Zeus was anything but harmonious. It's almost a cosmic joke that the goddess who presided over weddings and sacred unions was embroiled in what historians call the most complicated marriage in Greek mythology. From the very beginning, Hera's marriage was defined less by affection and more by jealousy, suspicion, and an almost relentless drive to assert her power. Zeus, the king of the gods, was notoriously unfaithful, his romantic escapades stretching across the heavens and earth. For Hera, each affair was a blow not just to her pride, but to her divine authority, and her reactions shaped some of the most dramatic myths we know today. It's quiet but unmistakable evidence that even divine marriages bore the same scars of betrayal and mistrust that plague human relationships. The paradox of Hera's marriage is that she's both the victim and the agent of jealousy. She's often portrayed as spiteful, even cruel, towards Zeus's lovers and their children. Yet this bitterness is understandable if you consider how her own identity and power were bound to her role as Zeus's wife. It's like watching a queen defending her throne, though the throne itself is shaky and uncertain. Some scholars suggest Hera's jealous rages were less personal vendettas, and more calculated political maneuvers, expressions of the shifting power dynamics among the Olympian gods. Remember that bit about divine jealousy being a political tool? Hera's wrath might just be the ultimate example. Her punishments often created ripple effects that shaped mortal and immortal destinies alike, like the tragic tale of Heracles, whom she relentlessly persecuted even though he was Zeus's son. Interestingly, Hera's story also reveals a quirky, lesser-known tidbit despite all the strife. She was the goddess who blessed marriages and was worshipped in countless rituals aimed at protecting wedlock. It's a kind of divine irony the goddess overseeing marriage was deeply involved in marital sabotage. This dual role adds depth to her character, showing her as a goddess torn between her responsibilities and personal grievances. The tension between public duty and private pain is something that resonates even today. And that's what makes Hera's myth so compelling and painfully human. You can almost feel the weight of that jealousy hanging in the air, like a silent storm that never quite passes. But Hera's story is more than just marital drama. It's about the limits of divine power and the ways in which even the gods are bound by emotions and social expectations. Her narrative invites us to think about the cost of jealousy, how it can consume, distort, and ultimately isolate those who wield it. It's a cautionary whisper beneath the thunderous actions of gods. Now, if you think Hera was the only goddess with marriage troubles, think again. Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, brought a whole different kind of chaos. She was famously married to Hephaestus, the master blacksmith of the gods, whose physical deformities stood in stark contrast to her radiant beauty. The match sounds like it was arranged to balance form and function, but Aphrodite had other ideas. Her love life was a tempest of passionate affairs and secret liaisons, most famously with Ares, the god of war. This love triangle is one of the most famous love scandals in mythology, filled with drama, betrayal, and public humiliation, a reminder that even immortals can't escape relationship drama. Aphrodite's story also highlights an important point. Love isn't always about stability or fidelity. Sometimes it's about desire, temptation, and the unpredictable whirlwind of passion. She embodies the wild side of love, where attraction defies reason and consequences are often ignored or swept aside. There's a humorous, almost cheeky note in imagining Hephaestus forging masterpieces in his fiery workshop, while his wife sneaks off with Ares. The gods were not immune to the messy realities of love triangles and emotional entanglements that plague us mere mortals. One quirky detail that many overlook is that Aphrodite was born from the sea foam, symbolizing beauty and desire, emerging from chaos and unpredictability. This origin story mirrors her impact on relationships, a force both enchanting and dangerously unstable. Historians still debate whether her affairs represent the natural complexity of love, or serve as warnings against uncontrolled passion. Either way, her narrative reveals the multifaceted nature of love, far from the idealized versions often told. Demeter's story offers a shift in tone. As the goddess of the harvest, her marriage to Zeus was overshadowed by her fierce maternal love for Persephone, her daughter. The myth of Persephone's abduction by Hades and Demeter's subsequent grief is not only a tale of loss and reunion, but a foundational story explaining the cycle of the seasons. It's a profound narrative that links divine relationships with natural phenomena. Demeter's maternal devotion was so intense that it disrupted the cosmic order, causing the earth to wither during Persephone's absence, a powerful metaphor for the cost of love and loss. This myth contains an unexpected twist. Demeter's relationship with Zeus is less central than her bond with Persephone, suggesting that motherhood can transcend marriage, even in the divine realm. The focus on maternal love introduces a rich layer to goddess relationships, where family ties sometimes outweigh romantic ones. It's a subtle but important detail that shifts our understanding of divine priorities and emotional bonds. Artemis and Athena take yet another approach, embodying independence and detachment from marriage. Artemis's vow of chastity and dedication to the hunt stands in sharp contrast to the marital struggles of her sister goddesses. She chooses freedom over the complications of romantic entanglements, a rare stance in mythological narratives where marriage is often seen as a female destiny. Artemis's independence is a radical statement, reflecting an aspect of divinity tied to autonomy and self-sufficiency. This choice echoes in modern conversations about female empowerment and agency. Athena's unmarried status further complicates the picture. As goddess of wisdom and war strategy, she represents a balance of intellect and strength that defies traditional female roles of the time. Her virginity is symbolic, emphasizing dedication to higher ideals over personal relationships. Some scholars argue that Athena's status challenges the patriarchal expectations embedded in Greek mythology, offering a different model of femininity. Her detachment from marriage serves as a powerful counterpoint to the turbulent love stories surrounding other goddesses. Finally, the story of Persephone's marriage to Hades introduces themes of duality and transformation. Her life divided between the underworld and the earth above symbolizes the cyclical nature of life and death, joy and sorrow. The myth raises questions about agency and consent. Did Persephone choose her fate, or was she a victim of circumstance? Historians still debate this, but the narrative's richness lies in its ambiguity. Her marriage is both a bond and a prison, reflecting the complex emotional terrain of relationships. So, as you drift deeper into these stories, you realize that the marriages of Greek goddesses were anything but simple. They were tangled with jealousy, passion, independence, and power struggles, much like the human relationships they so often mirror. But unlike mortals, these divine women's unions shape the cosmos itself, their dramas echoing through myths, seasons, and the very nature of existence. Aphrodite's love games were as wild and unpredictable as the sea from which she was born, swirling with beauty, desire, and a trail of chaos that left gods and mortals alike tangled in her wake. Unlike Hera's calculated jealousy or Demeter's maternal devotion, Aphrodite's relationships seem fueled by raw passion and a penchant for stirring trouble, sometimes with a sly grin that hinted she enjoyed the upheaval just as much as the affection. She was the goddess who could turn peace into war with a glance, whose beauty was both a blessing and a curse. You can almost hear the whisper of the ancient poets describing her allure, a force that seduces but never stays tethered, a flame that consumes and delights simultaneously. This intoxicating charm, however, was also the root of much divine marital turmoil. Married to Hephaestus, the god of the forge, Aphrodite's union was an intriguing mismatch of glamour and grit. Hephaestus was skilled and patient, crafting weapons and gifts that glittered with divine artistry, yet he was marked by his physical imperfection, a limp that made him an outcast among the gods. Their marriage, arranged to keep the balance of power, was far from the fairy tale you might imagine. Aphrodite's affairs, particularly with Ares, the fiery god of war, were a glaring scandal among the Olympians. The story of their secret tryst discovered by Hephaestus, who cunningly trapped them in an unbreakable net, is one of those myths dripping with irony and humor, yet underlined with themes of betrayal and humiliation. Imagine the drama gods caught in a cosmic web of deceit, laughter from the sidelines, and the weight of broken trust hanging heavy in the air. This episode is often retold with a playful tone, but it speaks to something deeper, how passion and fidelity collide in both divine and mortal worlds. Aphrodite's relationships defy easy categorization. She is neither the devoted wife nor the faithful lover. Instead, she represents the complexity of desire, unpredictable, sometimes destructive, always compelling. Scholars still debate whether Aphrodite's love affairs symbolize the natural human experience of passion or serve as cautionary tales about the dangers of unbridled desire. There's also a fringe theory that her story reflects ancient attitudes toward female sexuality, embracing its power while warning against its chaos. It's a fascinating tension, one that makes Aphrodite both revered and feared. Her love for Adonis, the mortal youth famed for his beauty, adds another layer to her romantic chaos. The myth goes that Adonis was torn between Aphrodite and Persephone, a love triangle that ended tragically with his death, symbolizing the fleeting nature of beauty and life itself. Aphrodite's grief and anger in this tale show a goddess deeply connected to mortal vulnerability, despite her divine power. It's one of those bittersweet myths that blend passion with inevitable loss, a recurring theme in stories about love and marriage. What's also fascinating is Aphrodite's role beyond romantic entanglements. She was worshipped across the ancient Greek world not only as a goddess of love, but also of fertility, beauty, and even political power. Temples dedicated to her were places where love and politics often intertwined, reflecting how closely personal relationships were linked to broader social dynamics. Her myths, with all their messiness, reveal how ancient societies grappled with the complexities of love, its joy, pain, and unpredictable outcomes. In the backdrop of these tumultuous relationships, Aphrodite's influence spread like wildfire, shaping human behavior and divine politics alike. Her powers were not limited to mere attraction. They encompassed control over hearts and minds, often blurring the lines between love and manipulation. One of the lesser-known tales involves her gifting a magical girdle that compelled anyone to fall in love with the wearer, a symbol of love's ability to enchant and enslave. It's a chilling reminder that love, in the myths, was never just innocent affection, but a force that could both create and destroy. Aphrodite's narratives often included playful humor as well. Picture the god Hermes trying to mediate between the feuding lovers, or the gods gossiping about yet another scandal at Olympus. These moments of lightness make the myths more relatable, as if the gods themselves couldn't resist the absurdity of their tangled romances. This blend of drama and comedy is what keeps the stories alive, allowing us to see the gods not as perfect beings, but as reflections of our own flawed and passionate selves. Meanwhile, Demeter's tale offers a different texture to the divine marriage tapestry. Her story is steeped in maternal love and the pain of loss, centered around her daughter Persephone's abduction by Hades. Unlike Aphrodite's fiery passions, Demeter's emotions are rooted in nurturing and grief, powerful enough to halt the growth of crops and bring the world to a standstill. This myth is an ancient explanation for the seasons, connecting human experience to cosmic cycles. But beneath this natural symbolism lies a complex portrait of a goddess whose marital relationship with Zeus is overshadowed by her maternal identity. Some interpretations suggest Demeter's focus on Persephone reflects a deliberate shift in divine priorities from marriage to motherhood, highlighting the flexibility and depth of goddess roles in mythology. This emphasis challenges the conventional idea that a goddess's primary function was to be a wife and partner. Instead, Demeter's devotion suggests that divine relationships could encompass a broader spectrum of love and responsibility. Historians still debate how much agency Demeter had in these myths. Was she a passive victim of Zeus's designs, or an active force shaping her own destiny? The layers of this story invite us to question how power and love interact in both divine and human realms. The emotional core of Demeter's myth, the mother's heartbreak, adds a tender yet fierce dimension to the divine marriage theme. It's easy to imagine her wandering the earth, her sorrow echoing in barren fields and cold winds, a poetic reminder that love's absence can alter the very fabric of life. This maternal intensity contrasts sharply with the more volatile and political marriages of other goddesses, showing the diverse ways love was portrayed in myth. Demeter's union with Zeus also reveals an underlying political aspect of marriage among the gods. Their relationship, though less celebrated in mythic drama, symbolized the balance between fertility and authority, earth and sky. It reminds us that marriage in Greek mythology often serves symbolic functions, reflecting natural phenomena and social order, rather than just personal affection. This dual role adds complexity to how we understand divine marriages as both literal relationships and metaphors for cosmic harmony. As you continue this quiet journey through the tangled stories of the goddesses, notice how each one embodies a unique perspective on love and marriage. Aphrodite's wild passion, Demeter's maternal devotion, Hera's jealous reign all paint a rich, varied picture that defies simple explanations. Their stories, whispered through time, invite you to consider not only the drama, but the deeper truths about power, choice, and the nature of relationships, divine or mortal. Demeter's world revolves around a love so profound, it reshapes the very earth beneath your feet, a maternal devotion that eclipses the usual concerns of marriage and power. While many goddesses weave tangled romantic webs, Demeter's story anchors itself in the sacred bond between mother and child, a connection that pulses at the heart of ancient Greek life. As you listen, you might picture her standing amid golden fields, the warm scent of grain heavy in the air, her eyes searching the horizon for her lost daughter Persephone. It's a grief that freezes the world, a love that commands the seasons to stop their endless turning until her child returns. This myth not only explains why the earth dies each winter, and blooms again in spring, but reveals something quietly revolutionary, that motherhood, not marriage, could define a goddess's deepest passion and influence. The tale begins with Persephone, Demeter's beloved daughter, whose beauty and innocence attract the dark gaze of Hades, god of the underworld. His abduction of Persephone is the spark that sets this myth's emotional fire, and it's wrapped in shadows and whispers rather than open warfare or spectacle. Some versions say Persephone was taken against her will. Others hint at a complex consent, but all agree her absence fractures the natural order. Demeter's sorrow is so immense that she withdraws her gifts from the earth, and famine sweeps across the lands. Mortals suffer as crops fail, and the gods watch, caught between sympathy and frustration. This vivid intersection of divine grief and human consequence is a powerful reminder that even the gods' loves carry weighty costs. There's a quirky side note to this myth: the pomegranate seeds Persephone eats in the underworld bind her fate, creating a seasonal cycle where she spends part of the year with Hades and part with her mother. This symbolic fruit, often associated with fertility and death, acts as a divine contract, blurring lines between captivity and choice. Scholars still debate the meaning of this element. Was it a mythic explanation for the seasons, or a metaphor for transitions in life and love? Either way, it's a poignant reminder that love often involves compromises and dualities, a dance between freedom and attachment. Demeter's relationship with Zeus, Persephone's father and king of the gods, is notably distant in this narrative. While Zeus orchestrates much of the divine politics, it's Demeter's maternal agency that drives the story's emotional core. This focus on motherhood over marriage challenges typical gender roles in mythology, suggesting that a goddess's power can emerge outside the bonds of wedlock. Demeter's defiance, as she withholds fertility from the earth, positions her as a force that demands respect and negotiation, not passive acceptance. It's a subtle but profound shift in perspective, highlighting that love's forms are varied and complex. You can almost feel the tension in the cosmic balance as the gods convene to resolve this crisis. Hades agrees to let Persephone return to the earth for the part of the year, but the deal comes with the condition that she must spend some months in the underworld, ensuring the cycle of seasons continues. This arrangement introduces a bittersweet rhythm to their relationship, a reminder that love and loss are intertwined, and that some bonds are never whole. The myth's cyclical nature invites reflection on the rhythms of life, death, and rebirth, an eternal dance where separation and reunion coexist. In a broader sense, Demeter's story reveals how goddess marriages and relationships often symbolize larger natural and social orders. Her grief-induced famine reflects humanity's dependence on divine favor for survival, intertwining love with cosmic necessity. The myth quietly asserts that the personal is political, that emotions ripple through the fabric of existence. You might find a quiet awe in recognizing how these ancient stories encoded human experience into the cycles of nature. Interestingly, Demeter was worshipped in mysteries and rituals that emphasized her role as a nurturer and protector of life, separate from her status as Zeus's consort. The Eleusinian Mysteries, one of the most important religious cults in ancient Greece, centered on Demeter and Persephone, celebrating the promise of rebirth and the mysteries of life and death. This religious significance underscores how her myth transcended marital concerns, focusing instead on themes of fertility, regeneration, and the sacred bond between mother and child. It's a beautiful reminder that divine relationships weren't only about marriage, but about sustaining life itself. This maternal devotion contrasts sharply with the jealous, often punitive nature of other goddess marriages, offering a softer, more nurturing dimension to divine relationships. Yet, it also carries its own tensions. Demeter's love is possessive and fierce, capable of devastating the world to reclaim her daughter. It's a love that commands attention, demanding acknowledgement of its power. This intensity provides a richer understanding of goddess roles, showing that love's expression varies widely across myths. Demeter's tale also opens the door to exploring how these divine marriages were reflections of ancient Greek society's values and anxieties. The prominence of motherhood and fertility in her story highlights the centrality of family and lineage, while the absence of romantic harmony reveals the complexities beneath idealized marital images. Historians still argue about how these myths shape social norms and individual expectations, but it's clear that the divine dramas offered lessons about love's sacrifices and triumphs. As you listen, you might feel the quiet strength of Demeter's love, a force both gentle and unyielding, echoing through the seasons and reminding us that sometimes love's greatest power lies in its ability to endure absence and change. Her story lingers softly, like the first green shoots of spring after a long winter, promising renewal and the enduring bond between mother and child. Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, wilderness, and the moon, stands apart from her divine sisters in a way that quietly unsettles the traditional tapestry of goddess marriages and romantic entanglements. You can almost imagine her stepping silently through dense forests, her bow drawn taut, her eyes sharp and unwavering, a protector of wild places and untamed spirits. She is fiercely independent, having taken a solemn vow of chastity, a promise to remain untouched by marriage or romantic love, a decision that ripples through the myths as both empowering and isolating. This vow complicates the typical narrative of divine marriages, illustrating that not all goddesses were bound by the conventions of union or the often messy dynamics of romantic relationships. Instead, Artemis embodies an alternative ideal, one of self-determination, autonomy, and fierce protection of personal freedom. Her refusal to marry or submit to romantic attachment was radical, especially in a culture where marriage was central to female identity and social order. You can hear the soft defiance in her story, a whisper that challenges the very notion that a goddess's destiny is tied to partnership or motherhood. Artemis's commitment to virginity is intertwined with her role as a protector of women and children, adding layers to her myth that go beyond personal choice into sacred duty. Her autonomy is not just personal, but cosmic, representing the wild, unpredictable forces of nature that resist domestication. Historians and scholars debate whether Artemis's vow was a reflection of real ancient practices, such as the cults of maiden priestesses who lived outside the bounds of marriage, or a mythic idealization of female strength. Regardless, her narrative resonates with modern themes of female empowerment and the right to define one's own path. Artemis's story invites you to consider the costs and rewards of such independence, the freedom to roam wild and free, but also the loneliness that can accompany it. It's a complex balance that echoes in many tales of selfhood and sacrifice. Interestingly, Artemis's myth is filled with moments where her independence leads to conflict or tragedy. For example, her swift and deadly reaction to anyone who violated her sacred spaces or disrespected her vows reflects a strict code of honor. She could be merciless, a reminder that autonomy comes with the fierce defense of boundaries. These stories carry a sobering lesson that choosing freedom and self-determination is not always gentle or easy. You might feel a shiver as you think about the arrows flying silently through the night, a symbol of justice and retribution wielded by a goddess who would rather face war than surrender her autonomy. Despite her vow, Artemis's relationships with other gods and mortals were complex. She was often invoked as a protector during childbirth, paradoxically linking her virginity with the life-giving power of women. This duality, chaste goddess and guardian of life, adds richness to her character, challenging simple categorizations. In some myths, she forms deep friendships and alliances, such as with her twin brother Apollo, highlighting that connection doesn't always require romantic or marital bonds. These subtleties remind you that divine relationships can be varied and nuanced, much like human ones. There's a quirky tidbit that often escapes notice. Artemis was sometimes associated with sudden death and disease, particularly among women and children. This darker aspect underscores her role as a goddess of both protection and destruction, embodying the wild unpredictability of nature itself. It's a striking contrast to the romanticized images of love and marriage, showing that goddesses like Artemis encompass a full spectrum of existence: life, death, freedom, and fate. Athena, another virgin goddess, shares similarities with Artemis but brings her own unique flavor to the narrative of divine independence. As goddess of wisdom, strategy, and war, Athena's life is marked by intellect and discipline, rather than passion or romance. You might picture her standing tall in gleaming armor, shield raised, eyes steady with calm determination, a warrior goddess who embodies reason over emotion. Athena's unmarried status serves as a symbol of dedication to higher pursuits and civic responsibility. Reflecting values esteemed in ancient Greek culture, her virginity is not merely a personal choice, but a representation of her commitment to wisdom and the polis. The scholarly debate around Athena often centers on whether her virginity was a statement of empowerment or a reflection of restrictive gender roles. Was she a symbol of female strength and autonomy, or a model that denied women access to the fuller experience of life, including love and family? These questions linger, offering fertile ground for reflection on how myths encode social norms and tensions. Athena's example adds complexity to the theme of goddess marriages, showing that not all divine women were defined by relationships with men. Athena's stories frequently highlight her role as a mentor and protector, guiding heroes like Odysseus and Perseus, rather than engaging in personal romantic dramas. This focus on mentorship and strategy over passion underscores her unique position in the pantheon. Her character offers a vision of femininity intertwined with power, intellect, and independence, challenging traditional narratives about marriage and female destiny. Like Artemis, Athena's relationships are varied, but rarely romantic. She's often depicted as a companion to heroes and a guardian of cities, suggesting that connection and partnership can exist outside the bounds of marriage. This portrayal enriches your understanding of divine interactions, emphasizing collaboration, respect, and shared purpose rather than romantic attachment. The stories of Artemis and Athena introduce a refreshing counterpoint to the often turbulent marital tales of goddesses like Hera and Aphrodite. Their narratives remind you that divine women could embody autonomy, wisdom, and strength without romantic entanglement. These figures quietly challenge the assumption that marriage is the inevitable or ultimate destiny for goddesses or for women in general. So, as you imagine Artemis silently moving through moonlit woods or Athena calmly strategizing in the halls of Olympus, you glimpse a broader spectrum of divine womanhood. Their choices resonate across time, inviting you to consider the many ways love, commitment, and independence can intertwine in both myth and life. The quiet power of their stories lingers like a gentle night breeze, soft but unmistakable. Athena's presence in the Greek pantheon is a study in contrasts, and her unmarried status is central to understanding her unique role among the gods. She's not merely the embodiment of wisdom and strategic warfare, she represents a kind of divine independence rarely afforded to women in ancient myth or society. You can almost see her sitting atop the Acropolis, her helmet gleaming in the sunlight, spear in hand, eyes sharp with a mix of intellect and resolve, unencumbered by the traditional ties of marriage and motherhood that define so many of her divine sisters. Her virginity is less about chastity in a narrow sense and more about dedication to reason, to the city-state, and to ideals that transcend personal desire. This commitment shapes her interactions with mortals and gods alike and offers a fascinating glimpse into ancient attitudes toward female power. The mythology surrounding Athena reveals how her identity was closely tied to male cultural ideals of wisdom, order, and civic duty. She was revered as a protector of cities, a patron of crafts, and a guide to heroes who embody the virtues of courage and intellect. Yet, despite her central role, she never engaged in romantic or marital relationships, setting her apart from other goddesses whose stories were often dominated by love, jealousy, and family drama. It's this absence of personal entanglement that scholars argue both elevates her and limits her, suggesting she embodies an ideal of womanhood defined by detachment and duty rather than emotional connection. Some interpret Athena as a symbol of the socially acceptable female ambition within the confines of a patriarchal society. You might find it interesting that Athena was born fully grown and armored from the head of Zeus, a striking origin story that marks her as a being of intellect and power, rather than natural birth and maternal connection. This mythic birth underscores her role as a deity of mind over matter and reason over passion, reinforcing the theme of autonomy. It also separates her from the traditional cycles of birth, marriage, and motherhood that define many other goddesses' narratives. In this way, Athena's story quietly challenges the dominant expectations of female divinity, offering a model of power unlinked from the typical life stages. Her virginity, while a personal trait, also functioned symbolically within the religious and social frameworks of ancient Greece. Athena was worshipped as Athena Parthenos, the Virgin, a title that was celebrated in festivals like the Panathenaea, which honored her protective role over Athens. These rituals emphasized her purity and strength, aspects that were associated with the city's ideals of order, justice, and resilience. The virginity of Athena was less about sexual renunciation and more about an unyielding commitment to the collective good, an idea that resonated deeply with Athenian values. It's a nuanced perspective that invites reflection on how religious symbolism shapes and reflects social norms. Athena's relationships with other gods and mortals highlight her role as a guide and protector rather than a romantic partner. She is famously a mentor to heroes such as Odysseus and Perseus, providing wisdom, strategy, and divine assistance in their quests. These interactions emphasize her supportive but non-domestic role, illustrating a form of divine partnership built on respect and mutual goals, rather than emotional or marital bonds. You can almost imagine the quiet counsel she offers, a steady hand guiding mortals through the chaos of fate, embodying a kind of maternal care that transcends traditional family ties. Yet, Athena was not without moments of fierce passion, though these passions were directed toward justice, warfare, and the defense of cities rather than romantic love. Her wrath against those who dishonor the gods or threaten social order is well documented, from the punishment of Arachne, the mortal weaver who dared challenge her, to her support for Greek heroes in the Trojan War. These stories reveal a goddess whose emotional intensity is channeled into protection and retribution, highlighting a complex character who blends intellect with righteous fury. It's a reminder that detachment from romance does not equate to emotional coldness. There's also an intriguing scholarly debate about how Athena's virginity and unmarried status reflect broader societal views on women's roles. Was she a model of empowerment, representing a woman free from the constraints of marriage and motherhood? Or was she a symbol of the ideal woman who suppresses personal desires for the sake of duty and public service? The answers are not simple, and the tension between these interpretations makes Athena a rich subject for contemplation. Her story invites you to ponder the costs and benefits of different forms of female agency. Athena's presence in art and literature further illustrates her multifaceted role. From the grand statue of Athena Parthenos by Phidias to countless vase paintings depicting her with helmet and spear, she's portrayed as a formidable figure, both nurturing and martial. These images capture her dual nature, wise protector and fierce warrior, and cement her place as one of the most complex and enduring goddesses of Greek mythology. Her iconography invites viewers to consider the balance of strength and wisdom, independence and responsibility. As you reflect on Athena's story, you might feel a quiet respect for this goddess who defied easy categorization. She's a reminder that power and femininity can coexist in many forms, and that autonomy does not require severing all connections, but can manifest through dedication to principles and the community. Her myth gently challenges the notion that marriage is the defining feature of a goddess or a woman, opening space for a broader understanding of identity and purpose. In this way, Athena's narrative adds depth to the theme of why Greek goddesses were terrible at staying married, not because they lacked desire or ability, but because some simply refused to be confined by the institution. Their stories reflect diverse experiences and choices, many of which resonate far beyond ancient myth, speaking to timeless questions about love, freedom, and selfhood. Persephone's story drifts quietly between two worlds, caught in a delicate balance that has fascinated storytellers and scholars for millennia. You might picture her stepping softly through sunlit meadows one moment and descending into the shadow depths of the underworld the next, her presence a living symbol of duality and transformation. Unlike the other goddesses whose marriages are marked by fiery passion or steadfast defiance, Persephone's union with Hades is tinged with tragedy, mystery, and an unsettling ambiguity. She's both queen and captive, daughter and wife, embodying a liminal space where life and death, light and darkness, freedom and constraint intermingle. This myth quietly reveals how divine marriages could be both binding and transformative, shaping not just individual destinies but the very cycles of nature. The abduction of Persephone by Hades, god of the underworld, is the myth's fulcrum, a moment both violent and profound. Some versions portray it as a forceful kidnapping, a dark marriage imposed upon her, Others suggest a more complex interplay of fate and consent. Historians and mythologists still debate the nuances. Was Persephone a victim or a willing participant? This ambiguity is part of what makes her story endlessly compelling, inviting listeners to ponder themes of autonomy, destiny, and the complicated nature of power in relationships. It's a gentle but persistent question hanging in the air, like the soft rustle of leaves signaling change. Persephone's descent into the underworld and her eventual role as its queen introduces a striking duality to the concept of marriage. Unlike the terrestrial unions of Olympus, her relationship with Hades is entwined with death, the afterlife, and the hidden forces that govern existence. She occupies a space where love is intertwined with loss, connection with separation, and power with vulnerability. It's a stark reminder that not all marriages fit the romantic mold. Some bind us in ways that are mysterious and profound, shaping our very being. One often overlooked detail is the role of the pomegranate seeds Persephone consumes in the underworld. By eating this fruit, she seals her fate to spend part of the year with Hades, ensuring a cyclical return to the living world. This act, small yet monumental, symbolizes the inevitable ties that bind and the compromises woven into love and commitment. The pomegranate is not just a fruit, but a metaphor for the intertwined nature of joy and sorrow, presence and absence, freedom and obligation. This symbolism resonates across cultures and epochs, a quiet thread linking ancient myth to universal human experience. Demeter's grief over Persephone's absence plunges the world into barrenness, halting the growth of crops and ushering in the winter months. This cosmic response to a mother's sorrow is a powerful testament to the interdependence of divine love and natural order. The myth thus serves as an ancient explanation for the seasons, but also as a profound exploration of how personal loss can ripple outward, affecting communities and ecosystems. It's a narrative that blurs the boundaries between the divine and the mortal, the personal and the universal. The cyclical nature of Persephone's marriage introduces a rhythm of separation and reunion, a dance of descent and ascent that mirrors human experiences of change and transition. This dynamic invites contemplation on the nature of commitment not as a static state, but as a process marked by phases, challenges, and growth. The myth suggests that relationships can encompass darkness as well as light, confinement as well as liberation. It's a nuanced portrayal that enriches the broader theme of goddess marriages being complex and multifaceted. Persephone's dual role also symbolizes the tension between youthful innocence and mature responsibility. Her transformation from maiden to queen of the underworld marks a passage from one phase of life to another, a rite of passage embedded within the marriage itself. This journey reflects broader human themes of growth, identity, and the negotiation of power within relationships. It's a reminder that marriage, in its many forms, is often a transformative experience that reshapes who we are. In artistic depictions, Persephone often appears with a blend of light and shadow, embodying her liminal status. Ancient vase paintings and sculptures capture her serene yet enigmatic expression, a queen caught between realms. These images reinforce the myth's themes, portraying her as a figure of both beauty and mystery, strength and vulnerability. The visual legacy of Persephone's story continues to inspire and haunt, a testament to its enduring power. The scholarly debates surrounding Persephone's myth also extend to interpretations of gender and power. Some view her story as a reflection of ancient patriarchal structures, where a daughter is transferred from the authority of her mother to that of her husband, symbolizing societal control over female autonomy. Others see it as a narrative of female empowerment, where Persephone claims a sovereign role in the underworld, ruling alongside Hades. This tension adds richness to the myth, inviting listeners to consider multiple perspectives on love, marriage, and agency. Persephone's narrative resonates beyond ancient Greece, influencing literature, psychology, and art across cultures. Her story has been reinterpreted in countless ways, from fairy tales to modern novels, often serving as a metaphor for cycles of loss and renewal, the unconscious, and the balance between opposing forces within the self. This enduring relevance highlights how myths about divine marriages continue to speak to fundamental human experiences. As you reflect on Persephone's journey, You may sense a quiet invitation to embrace the complexities of love and commitment, recognizing that they often encompass light and shadow, freedom and binding, joy and sorrow. Her story lingers softly, like the fading light at dusk, a gentle reminder that love's true power lies not in perfection, but in its capacity to transform and endure through all seasons of life. Hestia's story moves quietly through the halls of Olympus, her presence a soft, steady flame amid the fiery tempests of divine drama. Unlike her sisters who wrestled with jealousy, passion, or tragic fate, Hestia embodies stability, peace, and the sacred hearth that binds gods and mortals alike. You can almost feel the gentle warmth of her eternal fire flickering in a humble temple's heart, a symbol of home and community that transcends the tumultuous tales of marriage and infidelity. Her choice to remain unmarried and to relinquish her claim to marriage and romantic entanglement is both powerful and deeply humbling, offering a different kind of divine femininity, one rooted in nurture, sanctuary, and sacred duty. Hestia's role as the goddess of the hearth and domesticity places her at the center of both family and state, a quiet guardian whose flame represents continuity and the sacred bonds that hold society together. In ancient Greece, every home's hearth was dedicated to Hestia, and her flame was tended with reverence, symbolizing the life force of the household. This intimate connection to daily life contrasts sharply with the grand, often volatile stories of the other Olympian gods and goddesses, underscoring a divine presence that is calm and unassuming but essential. Her refusal to marry underscores a rejection of the personal dramas that often accompany romantic unions, choosing instead a role that transcends individual relationships. Interestingly, myths tell that Hestia was once promised in marriage to various gods, but she always declined, preferring her independence and the sanctity of her hearth. When her brother Poseidon and Apollo both sought her hand, she cleverly avoided the conflict by choosing to remain a virgin and dedicate herself entirely to her sacred role. This act of renunciation highlights the value placed on her stability and the high regard in which her role was held. Her choice is quietly revolutionary, illustrating that the power of a goddess can lie not in conquest or romance, but in steadfast presence and service. Her story also reflects a subtle commentary on the role of women and marriage in ancient Greek society. While many myths focus on the turmoil and trials of marriage, Hestia's narrative suggests that not all female power is expressed through romantic or marital relationships. Her flame symbolizes a communal bond, a spiritual center that holds together families and cities alike. This perspective invites a broader understanding of female divinity and agency, one that values nurturing and constancy as much as passion or rebellion. There's a delicate irony in Hestia's quiet power. As the goddess who keeps the fire burning, she ensures that life continues, homes stay warm, and communities thrive. Yet she remains largely absent from the dramatic stories that capture popular imagination. This contrast between influence and visibility is a poignant reminder that some forms of strength work behind the scenes, sustaining the world without fanfare or conflict. It's a soft whisper in a chorus of louder voices, a presence you feel rather than see. Hestia's influence extended into civic life as well. The public hearths of Greek city-states were dedicated to her, and her flame was carried in processions and ceremonies that marked communal identity and continuity. This civic role elevated her beyond the private sphere of the home, linking domestic stability to the well-being of the entire polis. Her flame was a symbol of unity, peace, and sacred order, underscoring how divine marriage and relationships were intertwined with social and political structures. While she chose to forgo marriage, Hestia's presence was deeply woven into the fabric of both divine and mortal existence. Her flame was the heart of feasts, rituals, and everyday life, a constant amid change and chaos. This role contrasts with the instability often depicted in the marriages of other goddesses, emphasizing that some divine women wielded power through steadiness rather than upheaval. Her story invites reflection on the diverse ways women's power and influence manifest, both in myth and in life. Historians still debate the extent to which Hestia's narrative represents a deliberate ideal of female virtue or a mythic reflection of social realities. Was her virginity a symbol of purity and devotion to community, or a marginalization of female sexuality? These questions remain open, offering fertile ground for interpretation and contemplation. Regardless, her story offers a counterpoint to the turbulent tales of love and marriage, suggesting that peace and continuity are themselves forms of sacred power. You might find yourself comforted by Hestia's gentle flame, a symbol of home and hearth that endures beyond the storms of passion and jealousy. Her story is a quiet refuge in the pantheon, reminding you that sometimes the greatest strength lies in constancy, service, and the unassuming power of presence. As you listen, imagine the soft glow of a fire flickering in a dark room, a warmth that sustains and welcomes, a sacred space untouched by the dramas of romance. In this way, Hestia enriches the tapestry of goddess marriages, showing that divine femininity encompasses a vast spectrum from the fiery passions of Aphrodite to the calm sanctuary of the hearth. Her narrative softly challenges the idea that marriage and romance define a goddess's worth, offering instead a vision of power rooted in nurture, community, and sacred responsibility. Zeus, the king of the gods, is at the heart of many divine marriages and the chaos that often follows them. His numerous affairs, both with goddesses and mortals, create a web of jealousy, conflict, and drama that resonates through the myths and shapes the fates of gods and humans alike. You can almost hear the whispered gossip of Mount Olympus as Zeus's latest conquest stirs the wrath of Hera or disrupts the delicate balance among the gods. His infidelities are not mere personal failings. They are catalysts for some of the most compelling and complex stories in Greek mythology. This pattern of unfaithfulness reveals not only Zeus's character, but also the broader dynamics of power, desire, and consequence that define divine marriages. Zeus's charm and authority made him irresistible to many, but his inability or unwillingness to remain faithful generated lasting strife. Hera, his wife and queen, was often portrayed as the jealous and vengeful goddess, constantly punishing Zeus's lovers and their offspring. This ongoing conflict between Zeus's lust and Hera's wrath is a recurring theme that colors much of the mythology. Emphasizing the fragile and volatile nature of divine marriages, you might picture Hera's simmering anger as a storm cloud perpetually gathering, ready to unleash thunderous retribution on those who crossed her. Her actions, while often harsh, highlight the high stakes involved in these celestial relationships. Interestingly, Zeus's affairs produced many notable offspring, both divine and heroic, who played crucial roles in mythic narratives. Heracles, Perseus, and Helen of Troy are just a few examples of children born from these unions, each carrying the weight of their divine and mortal heritage. The consequences of Zeus's infidelities thus extend beyond marital discord. They shape the very fabric of myth and legend, influencing wars, quests, and tragedies. These stories illustrate how divine relationships were deeply intertwined with human fate, reinforcing the gods' power and their vulnerabilities. There's a somewhat humorous side to Zeus's escapades, too. The god was known to disguise himself as animals or other forms to seduce his lovers, transforming into a swan, a bull, or even a shower of gold. These shape-shifting antics add a playful, almost mischievous tone to the myths, but they also underscore Zeus's relentless pursuit of desire and his willingness to deceive. It's a reminder that the gods were far from perfect, embodying human flaws magnified through divine power. You might chuckle softly, imagining Zeus as a golden rain, slipping through cracks and crevices in search of his next conquest. Historians still debate how these myths reflect ancient Greek attitudes toward marriage, fidelity, and power. Was Zeus's infidelity an acknowledgement of male privilege and dominance, or a cautionary tale about the consequences of unchecked desire? The ambiguity adds layers of meaning to the stories, inviting reflection on gender dynamics and the social order. These myths function not only as entertainment, but as a way to explore complex human relationships and societal norms through the lens of divine drama. Zeus's relationships often created rivalries and alliances among the gods, shaping the political landscape of Olympus. The tensions between Hera and Zeus's lovers frequently led to divine conflicts that mirrored human struggles for power and influence. This divine soap opera reveals how marriage among gods was not merely personal, but deeply political, involving negotiations of status, authority, and legitimacy. It's a reminder that love and power are often intertwined in ways both beautiful and brutal. Despite his flaws, Zeus was also seen as a protector of marriage and social order, presiding over oaths and the sanctity of family. This paradox of a god who was both unfaithful and guardian of marriage reflects the complex nature of divine authority. His contradictions offer a nuanced view of power, showing that even the highest gods grappled with human-like imperfections. This duality adds depth to the myths, making Zeus a multifaceted figure whose actions have far-reaching consequences. In art and literature, Zeus's image ranges from a regal, commanding presence to a cunning trickster, reflecting the many facets of his character. His portrayals capture both his majesty and his flaws, inviting viewers to contemplate the complexities of leadership and desire. These depictions reinforce the idea that divine marriages were not simple tales of love, but intricate stories of power, temptation, and consequence. As you reflect on Zeus's tangled love life, you may sense the timelessness of these themes, how power can corrupt, how desire can complicate relationships, and how even those at the top are not immune to the vulnerabilities of the heart. His story is a cautionary whisper amid the thunderous deeds of gods and heroes, a reminder that marriage, even divine, is fraught with challenges and contradictions. The divine marriages and romantic entanglements of Greek goddesses didn't just remain celestial affairs. They reached deep into the mortal world, shaping human lives, cultural values, and the myths that taught lessons about love, loyalty, and power. You can almost hear the stories whispered around ancient hearths, the echoes of Olympian drama reverberating through generations, influencing how people understood their own relationships. The consequences of goddess marriages often manifested in myths involving heroes, kings, and ordinary mortals, whose fates were tied to divine favor or wrath. This intersection of divine and human realms underscores how the myths were not just entertainment, but vital frameworks for grappling with the complexities of human experience. Consider the tale of Helen of Troy, whose divine parentage, born of Zeus's infidelity with Leda, made her a figure of extraordinary beauty and destiny. Her marriage and subsequent abduction sparked the Trojan War, a cataclysmic event that reshaped the ancient world. This story encapsulates how the unions of gods and goddesses could have monumental repercussions for humanity, intertwining personal relationships with political and military upheaval. The gods' private dramas spilled over into mortal affairs, reminding listeners that divine marriages were never isolated. They carried consequences far beyond Olympus. Another poignant example is the story of Heracles, Zeus's son with the mortal Alcmene. His life was marked by heroic feats and tragic struggles, many of which stemmed from Hera's relentless jealousy and vengeance. Heracles' mortal challenges echo the divine marital discord above, showing how the gods' conflicts played out in human suffering and triumph. These narratives offered ancient audiences models of perseverance, resilience, and the complex interplay of fate and free will, all rooted in the tangled webs of divine relationships. The influence of goddess marriages extended into moral and social lessons embedded in the myths. Tales of jealousy, betrayal, and reconciliation served as cautionary or instructive stories about the dangers of infidelity, the virtues of loyalty, and the consequences of passion unchecked by reason. These narratives shaped cultural norms around marriage, family, and social order, reinforcing values and warning against behaviors that could destabilize community harmony. You might imagine these stories being recounted at festivals, teaching young listeners the delicate balance required in relationships. There's also an intriguing dimension where goddess marriages symbolize natural and cosmic processes that affected human life. Demeter and Persephone's myth, for example, explained the changing seasons and agricultural cycles, linking divine relationships directly to the rhythms of nature upon which human survival depended. This connection highlights how ancient people used myths of divine unions to make sense of the world around them, integrating spiritual and practical knowledge. The gods' stories were thus living metaphors for life cycles, reflecting the inseparability of human experience from the cosmos. The moral ambiguities in many myths also reflect ancient wrestling with the complexities of love and marriage. The gods were fallible and passionate, embodying virtues and vices alike, and their relationships were neither idealized nor simplistic. This complexity allowed myths to explore the tensions inherent in human relationships between desire and duty, freedom and commitment, joy and suffering. The stories provide a space for reflection on the multifaceted nature of love, far beyond the romantic ideal. Some myths also portray goddess marriages as allegories for political alliances and social structures, using divine relationships to mirror human institutions. Marriages between gods and goddesses often represented the unification of different powers or regions, symbolizing harmony or conflict among communities. These narratives reinforce the importance of social cohesion and the roles individuals played within broader systems. You can see how divine marriages functioned as metaphors for stability and disruption in human society. The influence of these divine tales extended into religious practice, with festivals, rituals, and cults dedicated to various goddesses and their marriages. These events reinforced community bonds and provided frameworks for understanding gender roles, sexuality, and family life. The goddesses' stories were lived experiences for worshippers, shaping their identities and relationships with the divine. This integration of myth and ritual underscores how goddess marriages were embedded deeply in the fabric of ancient culture. Interestingly, the enduring appeal of these myths lies in their reflection of universal themes that transcend time and place. The dramas of love, jealousy, power, and transformation resonate because they mirror human realities, offering insight into the joys and pains of connection. The divine stories provide both distance and closeness, allowing listeners to explore these themes safely while recognizing their own experiences in the narratives. You might feel a subtle sense of comfort or caution as these myths unfold, comfort in knowing that even gods struggle with relationships, and caution about the complexities and consequences of love. The stories linger like soft echoes in the mind, inviting contemplation of your own relationships and the forces that shape them. They remind us that love is never simple, whether divine or mortal, but always profound. As these ancient tales weave through time, they continue to influence art, literature, and culture, shaping how we understand marriage and love today. Their echoes can be found in countless stories, from Shakespearean tragedies to modern dramas, reflecting the timeless human fascination with divine and mortal unions. The myths of goddess marriages are, in essence, mirrors held up to ourselves, reflecting the light and shadow of love's many forms. Jealousy among the Greek goddesses was far more than just a petty squabble or personal grievance. It was a powerful force that shaped the very politics of Olympus and echoed the struggles for power and control in the mortal world below. You might picture a grand divine court, where Hera's sharp gaze pierces through whispered conversations, and Aphrodite's subtle glances spark flames of rivalry. This divine jealousy was often wielded as a political tool, a way to assert dominance, influence alliances, and challenge rivals in the eternal game of celestial power. The intense emotions that fueled these jealousies were not random outbursts, but calculated moves in a larger drama where love, power, and politics were deeply intertwined. Take Hera, for example, whose jealous rage against Zeus's many lovers was legendary. Her vengeance was swift and merciless, targeting not only the women but also their children heroes, demigods, and mortals alike. This relentless pursuit of retribution was as much about preserving her status and authority as Queen of the Gods as it was about personal hurt. Hera's jealousy functioned as a form of political control, reinforcing her position by undermining potential threats and reminding others of her power. You might imagine her wrath as a thunderstorm, both feared and respected, a natural force that no one could ignore. Similarly, Aphrodite's own rivalries often involved jealousy that had significant repercussions. Her conflicts with other goddesses over beauty, love, and favor were not mere personal spats, but struggles that could ignite wars and upheavals among gods and mortals. The famous contest between Aphrodite, Hera, and Athena for the Golden Apple, judged by Paris, led directly to the Trojan War, illustrating how divine jealousy could cascade into catastrophic mortal consequences. This story highlights the high stakes of celestial jealousy and the intertwining of personal emotions with political outcomes. Jealousy also served as a narrative device to explain the origins of various myths, tragedies, and curses. The punitive actions taken by jealous goddesses often set heroes on difficult quests or doomed mortals to tragic fates. These stories conveyed moral lessons about the dangers of provoking divine wrath and the complexities of human emotions. The gods' jealousies reflected human passions but amplified to cosmic proportions, offering audiences a way to understand and process their own experiences with envy and rivalry. Interestingly, the use of jealousy as a political tool was not limited to female gods. Zeus himself exhibited jealousy over his authority and lineage, manipulating relationships and offspring to maintain control. However, it was the goddesses' jealousies that most vividly illustrated the gender dynamics of power on Olympus. These rivalries often underscored tensions between competing spheres of influence between marriage and fertility, wisdom and beauty, order and chaos. The divine jealousies mirrored and magnified the conflicts and negotiations present in ancient Greek society. Scholars debate the extent to which these myths reflect real political and social structures of the time. Some argue that divine jealousy was a metaphor for the struggles between city-states, ruling families, or social classes, encoded into accessible stories about gods and goddesses. Others see it as a reflection of patriarchal anxieties about female power and sexuality, with jealous goddesses embodying fears of female agency that threatened male dominance. These interpretations add layers to the myths, showing how jealousy functioned as both narrative drama and social commentary. The psychological dimensions of divine jealousy are equally compelling. These stories expose how love and rivalry are entangled, how desire can fuel both creation and destruction, and how emotional pain can be both personal and political. The gods' jealousies reveal their vulnerabilities and complexities, making them relatable despite their divine status. This humanity within the gods invites listeners to reflect on their own experiences with jealousy and the ways it shapes relationships and communities. In artistic portrayals, divine jealousy is often depicted through dramatic scenes of confrontation, punishment, or sorrow. Vase paintings and sculptures capture moments of divine wrath, from Hera's furious gaze to Aphrodite's scornful beauty, conveying the intensity and consequences of jealousy. These visual narratives reinforce the emotional and political power of jealousy in myth, making it a vivid and enduring theme. You might sense, as you listen, a quiet warning in these tales. Jealousy, while a natural human emotion, can become a destructive force when wielded for power or left unchecked. The gods' stories remind us of the fine line between protective love and destructive envy, between asserting oneself and harming others. This insight lingers like a shadow, inviting you to contemplate the costs of jealousy in your own life and the lives around you. Ultimately, divine jealousy in goddess marriages was a complex and multifaceted force, shaping relationships, influencing power dynamics, and driving mythic narratives. It was both a personal emotion and a political strategy, a source of conflict and a catalyst for change. As you reflect on these stories, you realize that jealousy is woven into the fabric of love and power, divine and mortal alike, and that understanding its role is key to unraveling the intricate tapestry of human and divine relationships. Tales of betrayal and revenge among the Greek goddesses are woven deeply into the mythological fabric, illustrating how divine marriages often became battlegrounds for vengeance and justice, far more intense and enduring than any mortal quarrel. You can almost hear the quiet, simmering grudges ripple through Olympus, the whispered plans of gods and goddesses plotting retribution, their emotions as fierce and unstoppable as the elemental forces they represent. Betrayal in these divine unions was not a mere passing slight. It was a cosmic rupture, a wound that echoed through generations, shaping destinies and mythic landscapes alike. The gods' responses to betrayal ranged from cunning stratagems to outright curses, each story a testament to how sacred bonds, once broken, unleashed powerful, often destructive energies. Consider Hera's relentless vendetta against Zeus's lovers, and their offspring actions born from betrayal, but escalated into epic dramas of punishment and suffering. From the tragic fate of Heracles, whom she sought to destroy despite his heroism, to the torment of Io and many others, Hera's wrath was an unyielding force. Her revenge was often as political as it was personal, sending messages that betrayal would not go unpunished. The gods' response to infidelity was thus entangled with their need to maintain order and respect within the divine hierarchy, making betrayal both a personal violation and a challenge to cosmic balance. Aphrodite's narratives also teem with betrayal and vengeance, but with a different flavor. Her affairs and jealousies sparked rivalries that often ended in curses or humiliations. The story of Arachne, a mortal who dared challenge the goddess's weaving skills, is a vivid example, though not a marriage tale per se. It reflects the broader theme of divine retribution for perceived slights or betrayals of respect. These myths reveal that betrayal could take many forms, including challenges to divine authority or social order, and that revenge was a way to reassert power and maintain hierarchy. The theme of revenge also permeates stories where goddesses punish unfaithful spouses or those who wrong them. In some myths, goddesses take justice into their own hands, transforming rivals or betrayers into monsters or outcasts. These transformations serve as both punishment and moral lesson, illustrating the high stakes of divine marriage and fidelity. The tales often blend horror with poetic justice, offering grim reminders of betrayal's costs. You might feel a shiver imagining the fates of those caught in divine vengeance, a chilling echo of human fears around broken trust. There's a fascinating scholarly debate about the role of revenge in these myths, whether it reflects patriarchal anxieties about female agency or serves as a metaphor for natural and social justice. Some argue that goddesses' acts of revenge symbolize the enforcement of moral codes and social norms, while others see them as expressions of female power and resistance. This dual interpretation adds complexity to the stories, showing that revenge is not simply punitive but can be a form of empowerment or restoration. The psychology of betrayal and revenge in goddess marriages reveals deep insights into human emotions and relationships. These myths expose how pain and anger can drive actions, how trust, once broken, can lead to cycles of retaliation, and how forgiveness or reconciliation are rare and difficult. The gods' stories make these themes larger than life, allowing ancient audiences to explore the consequences of betrayal safely through mythic narrative. This universality is part of what makes these tales endure. Artistic depictions of divine revenge often capture moments of transformation, punishment, or confrontation, emphasizing the drama and emotional intensity. Statues, vase paintings, and frescoes illustrate goddesses in moments of wrath or sorrow, their expressions conveying the gravity of betrayal and its aftermath. These images reinforce the narratives, making the abstract emotions tangible and memorable. Despite the often dark tone of revenge tales, there is sometimes a touch of irony or tragedy. Goddesses who seek vengeance may also suffer loss or isolation, reminding listeners that revenge can be a double-edged sword. The stories caution against letting anger consume one entirely, suggesting the need for balance even in the face of profound hurt. As you listen, you may sense the haunting power of these myths, their echoes resonating with your own experiences of betrayal, hurt, and the desire for justice. They invite you to reflect on the complexity of human emotions, the consequences of broken trust, and the challenges of healing. These tales linger softly, a somber melody woven into the tapestry of love and loss. Ultimately, the myths of betrayal and revenge among Greek goddesses reveal the profound emotional stakes of divine marriages. They show how love and power intertwine with pain and retribution, creating stories that are both cautionary and deeply human. As you ponder these narratives, you understand that the divine drama mirrors the complexities of mortal relationships, offering timeless lessons about trust, justice, and the enduring quest for balance. Marriage among the Greek gods was far more than a personal contract. It was a metaphor for cosmic order, a symbolic weaving together of natural and social forces that govern both the heavens and the earth. Imagine the divine marriages not just as relationships between immortal beings, but as powerful allegories that reflected and reinforced the balance of the universe. Each union represented a union of elements, principles, or domains, shaping the cycles of nature and the fabric of society. This symbolic dimension elevates goddess marriages beyond mere romance or drama, positioning them as foundational myths that explain why the world is as it is, and how harmony is maintained amid chaos. Take, for instance, the marriage of Zeus and Hera. Beyond their personal entanglements, their union symbolized the harmony of sky and earth, the merging of sovereignty and fertility that ensured cosmic stability. Their often turbulent relationship mirrored the tensions inherent in maintaining order, reflecting how balance requires negotiation, conflict, and reconciliation. It's a vivid reminder that cosmic harmony is not static but dynamic, achieved through the interplay of opposing forces. This symbolic reading adds depth to their marital drama, transforming it into a cosmic dance with profound implications. Similarly, the story of Demeter and Persephone encapsulates the cyclical rhythms of life, death, and rebirth through the metaphor of a mother's love and a daughter's marriage. Their relationship explains the seasons, connecting divine emotion to earthly fertility. This metaphor extends the idea of marriage beyond personal union to encompass the fundamental cycles of nature that sustain human existence. The myth becomes a living symbol, teaching listeners about the interdependence of life and the sacred rhythms that govern it. The allegory of marriage as cosmic order also appears in the contrasting stories of virgin goddesses like Artemis and Athena. Their unmarried status can be interpreted as symbolic of untouched, pure forces, wild nature, and unyielding wisdom that resist domestication and personal attachment. These figures represent principles essential to balance, but not bound by the ties of marriage. Their presence in the pantheon reflects the diversity of cosmic functions and the necessity of independence alongside union. This symbolic dimension of divine marriage extends to the portrayal of conflict and reconciliation as essential aspects of maintaining balance. The jealousies, betrayals, and reconciliations among gods and goddesses are not mere personal dramas, but allegories for the tensions and resolutions required in nature and society. These stories illustrate how disorder can give rise to order, and how opposing forces are often interdependent. You might sense the subtle wisdom in these narratives, suggesting that harmony is achieved not by erasing difference, but by embracing and managing it. Scholars debate how consciously these myths were constructed as metaphors versus how much symbolic meaning was attributed later by interpreters. Regardless, the allegorical reading enriches the stories, allowing them to function on multiple levels: personal, social, and cosmic. This layering makes the myths resilient and relevant across cultures and eras, providing frameworks for understanding the world and our place within it. Marriage as a metaphor also reflects ancient Greek social structures, where marriage was central to the organization of family, property, and political alliances. Divine marriages mirrored and legitimized these human institutions, reinforcing the importance of partnership and hierarchy. The gods' relationships thus served as models, warnings, and explanations for human social order, embedding cultural values within captivating narratives. Art and literature often highlight this symbolic aspect of marriage through visual motifs and thematic elements. Scenes of union, separation, and reconciliation are portrayed with symbols that evoke natural cycles, power dynamics, and cosmic forces. These artistic representations deepen the mythic resonance, inviting viewers to perceive the stories beyond their surface drama. As you reflect on these allegories, you may appreciate the sophistication of ancient myth-making, where stories of love and marriage encoded profound truths about existence. The myths invite you to consider how relationships, whether divine or mortal, are part of a larger pattern of balance, conflict, and renewal that shapes life itself. This perspective softens the view of goddess marriages as simply terrible at staying married, instead framing them as dynamic expressions of the tensions and harmonies that sustain the cosmos. Their unions, with all their flaws and passions, become vital threads in the grand tapestry of existence. In this light, the stories of the Greek goddesses and their marriages resonate with timeless relevance, reminding us that love, power, and connection are complex forces that shape not only individual lives, but the very world we inhabit. Their myths whisper to you across the ages, urging reflection on the intricate dance of union and independence, passion and peace, chaos and order. Scholarly debates swirl endlessly around the agency of Greek goddesses in their marriages, probing how much control these divine women truly wielded in unions often dominated by powerful male gods. You might picture the goddesses, cloaked in radiant power, yet navigating a celestial hierarchy where Zeus's will often reigns supreme. Were these divine women mere pawns in a patriarchal game, forced into marriages and roles designed to maintain cosmic order? Or did they possess subtle forms of agency, maneuvering through the divine politics with wisdom, influence, and even rebellion? This question lies at the heart of understanding why Greek goddesses often appeared terrible at staying married, not simply because of personal flaws, but due to the complex interplay of power, gender, and societal expectations woven into their myths. Take Hera, whose marriage to Zeus was fraught with infidelity and conflict. On the surface, she appears as a jealous wife, endlessly persecuting Zeus's lovers. Yet some scholars argue that Hera's actions were not just reactions to personal betrayal, but strategic assertions of power, protecting her status and shaping divine succession. Her relentless pursuit of vengeance can be seen as a form of agency, wielded within the constraints imposed by Zeus's dominance. In this light, Hera emerges as a formidable figure navigating a patriarchal Olympus with cunning and resilience, asserting her presence despite systemic limitations. Similarly, Athena's unmarried state raises questions about autonomy and choice. Was her virginity a personal decision reflecting dedication to wisdom and civic duty, or a narrative device reinforcing male ideals of female purity and control? Athena's role as mentor and protector suggests significant influence, yet her lack of romantic relationships may reflect societal discomfort with female sexuality and independence. These tensions reveal the ambiguous space goddesses occupied both empowered and constrained by mythic conventions. Aphrodite's stories offer another perspective on agency. Though often portrayed as a figure driven by desire, she exercised considerable power through love and attraction, manipulating gods and mortals alike. Her affairs and the chaos they sowed were not merely impulsive acts, but expressions of influence over emotions and fate. In this sense, Aphrodite's agency lay in embracing and wielding the primal force of desire, challenging traditional norms through her unabashed sexuality. Scholars debate whether this represents empowerment or a reinforcement of stereotypes about women's power being tied to manipulation. The myth of Persephone illustrates a more complex form of agency intertwined with fate and coercion. Her abduction by Hades and subsequent role as queen of the underworld raise questions about consent and autonomy. Some interpretations view Persephone as a passive victim, while others see her as a transformative figure who embraces her dual existence. This ambiguity highlights the multifaceted nature of goddess agency, where control may be negotiated rather than absolute, and where empowerment can arise even in constrained circumstances. Demeter's fierce maternal devotion also reflects a form of agency distinct from marriage or romantic love. Her withdrawal of fertility from the earth as a response to Persephone's abduction asserts divine power through emotional expression, shaping cosmic cycles. This maternal agency operates outside traditional marital frameworks, emphasizing the diversity of divine women's roles and influences. The broader scholarly debate encompasses how these myths mirror ancient Greek societal structures and gender dynamics. Some argue that the limited agency of goddesses reflects real-world patriarchal restrictions, projecting social realities onto divine narratives. Others propose that myths offered women symbolic spaces to explore power, resistance, and identity, even if subtly or subversively. This tension enriches the study of mythology, revealing it as a dynamic dialogue between culture, belief, and imagination. Art and literature further complicate these questions, portraying goddesses with varying degrees of power and autonomy. Some depictions emphasize vulnerability and victimhood, while others highlight strength and defiance. These visual and textual portrayals contribute to evolving interpretations of goddess agency, showing that myths are not static but living stories reshaped by cultural context and perspective. You might find it fascinating how these debates resonate with modern discussions about gender, power, and autonomy. The ancient myths, though distant in time, engage with enduring human questions about identity, freedom, and the negotiation of social roles. The goddesses' struggles reflect ongoing challenges and aspirations, making their stories timeless mirrors for our own experiences. As you contemplate the agency of these divine women, you may sense a complex portrait emerging, one that resists simple judgments of failure or success in marriage. Instead, it reveals a rich tapestry of negotiation, resistance, and influence, shaped by the interplay of divine power and social expectation. Their terrible marriages can be seen as reflections of larger struggles for selfhood and authority. Ultimately, the scholarly discourse invites you to reconsider the goddesses' stories, appreciating their depth and complexity. Their myths are not just tales of personal discord, but profound explorations of power, choice, and identity in a world governed by gods and fate. This understanding deepens your connection to these ancient narratives, enriching the quiet journey through their tangled marriages and divine dramas. The threads of fate and prophecy wove themselves inexorably through the marriages of Greek goddesses, binding their lives and relationships to destinies often fraught with tragedy and transformation. You can almost hear the soft murmur of the Moirai, the fates, as they spin, measure, and cut the threads that determine the courses of gods and mortals alike. In these stories, marriage is not simply a personal choice or an emotional bond. It is an event preordained by cosmic forces, a juncture where divine will and destiny converge, sometimes bringing joy, but often ushering in sorrow. This intersection of fate and marriage adds a somber weight to goddess unions, framing them as elements in a grand design where individual agency is both asserted and constrained. Take Persephone's marriage to Hades, where prophecy and fate dictate a cycle of descent and return, binding her existence to the rhythms of the seasons. Her union is emblematic of how fate governs not only who the goddesses marry, but the very nature of their relationship, sometimes joyful, sometimes painful, always transformative. The seeds she consumes seal her to the underworld, symbolizing the inescapable ties of destiny and the bittersweet balance between freedom and obligation. Historians still debate how much choice Persephone exercised, but the myth clearly emphasizes the power of fate in shaping divine marriages. Hera's tumultuous marriage to Zeus is also shadowed by prophecy and divine will. Despite her jealous rages and retaliations, the couple's union was essential to maintaining the order of Olympus. Their marriage was part of a larger cosmic plan, balancing power and authority among the gods. Hera's role as queen and guardian of marriage, even amidst infidelity and conflict, reflects the inevitability of their union in the divine hierarchy. This sense of predestination adds a tragic dimension to their relationship, where personal grievances are subsumed by the demands of fate and duty. The theme of fate in goddess marriages extends to the mortal realm as well, where unions often fulfill or defy prophecies with significant consequences. The story of Oedipus, though centered on mortal characters, is intertwined with divine curses and fate that reflect the complex interplay of human choice and predetermined destiny. Such narratives illustrate how divine marriages and relationships were deeply connected to the forces shaping human life, reinforcing the omnipresence of fate in mythic storytelling. Artemis's vow of chastity can also be viewed through the lens of fate and prophecy. Her commitment to remain unmarried was not merely a personal choice, but a destiny intertwined with her role as goddess of the wilderness and protector of the young. Her independence was foretold and maintained by divine decree, highlighting how fate shapes not only marriages but the very identities and paths of goddesses. This intertwining of personal destiny and cosmic role emphasizes the limits and possibilities of agency within divine narratives. The concept of fate influencing goddess marriages is also evident in the stories of mortal women chosen or pursued by gods, whose unions were foretold or manipulated by prophetic forces. These tales often end in tragedy or transformation, underscoring the tension between human desire and divine will. The inevitability of fate creates dramatic irony, where characters struggle against predetermined outcomes with varying degrees of success. This tension deepens the emotional impact of the myths, inviting reflection on the nature of free will and destiny. Scholars debate the extent to which fate and prophecy were used to explain and justify the often troubled marriages of goddesses. Some interpret these themes as reflections of ancient beliefs about the cosmos's order and the limits of individual control. Others see them as narrative tools that add depth and inevitability to mythic drama. Regardless, fate remains a central motif in understanding the dynamics of divine marriages, framing them within a larger cosmic narrative. Artistic depictions of fate and prophecy in goddess marriages often emphasize moments of revelation or transformation, such as Persephone's descent or Hera's wrath, highlighting the emotional and spiritual significance of these events. These portrayals invite viewers to contemplate the tension between destiny and choice, power and submission, love and sacrifice. The visual language of these myths reinforces their thematic complexity, making the abstract concept of fate tangible and immediate. As you absorb these stories, you may sense a quiet awe at the intertwining of love and destiny. The the way cosmic forces shape even the most intimate relationships. The goddesses' marriages remind you that fate is a powerful undercurrent in life, guiding and challenging individuals in ways both mysterious and profound. Their stories linger like a soft, inevitable rhythm, inviting reflection on your own journeys through love, loss, and destiny. Ultimately, the role of fate and prophecy in goddess marriages enriches your understanding of why these unions were often terrible, at staying together not due to mere human failings, but because they were woven into a larger, sometimes tragic design. This perspective invites compassion and curiosity, encouraging you to see divine marriages as part of a cosmic story that resonates across time and space, illuminating the complex dance between choice and destiny. Divine marriages, with all their passion and turmoil, found vivid expression in the art and literature of ancient Greece, serving as mirrors reflecting both the grandeur and fragility of these unions. Imagine the soft flicker of torchlight illuminating painted vases, the delicate chisel marks on marble statues, or the rhythmic verses of epic poetry, each medium a channel through which the stories of goddesses and their marriages were brought to life, shaping how generations understood love, power, and destiny. The portrayal of these divine unions in art and literature was far from static. It evolved with cultural shifts, reflecting changing attitudes and deepening the mythic resonance of the gods' relationships. These creative expressions immortalized the dramas, tragedies, and triumphs of goddess marriages, making them accessible and compelling across time. In sculpture and pottery, goddesses were often depicted with symbols and gestures that hinted at their marital status, powers, and emotional states. Hera, for example, might be shown crowned and regal, her expression dignified yet tinged with sternness, an embodiment of both queenly authority and the burdens of jealousy. Aphrodite appeared radiant and sensuous, often accompanied by doves or mirrors, symbols of beauty and desire that underscored her role in love's turbulent affairs. These images conveyed complex narratives non-verbally, inviting viewers to interpret the layers of meaning embedded in posture, expression, and iconography. The artistic language of marriage and fidelity was subtle yet powerful, communicating divine stories without words. Literary works, from Homeric epics to lyric poetry and later tragedies, wove goddess marriages into their plots, exploring the emotional and moral complexities of these unions. The Iliad and Odyssey feature the gods as active participants, their marriages influencing mortal fate and weaving divine conflict into human history. Tragedians like Euripides and Sophocles dramatized the personal struggles of gods and mortals alike, using the tensions of marriage, fidelity, and power to probe universal themes of love, betrayal, and identity. These literary portrayals enriched the cultural understanding of goddess marriages, blending myth with human psychology and social commentary. There was also a rich tradition of visual storytelling in temple reliefs and votive offerings, where scenes of divine marriage or conflict were carved or painted to honor the gods and seek their favor. The Parthenon frieze, for example, while primarily celebrating Athena, includes depictions of gods and goddesses that suggest complex relationships and alliances. These artworks were not merely decorative, but served as public narratives that reinforced religious beliefs and social values, making the stories of goddess marriages integral to communal identity. Artistic and literary treatments of goddess marriages also reflected evolving cultural attitudes toward gender, sexuality, and power. In some periods, portrayals emphasized the harmony and sanctity of marriage, aligning with social ideals of order and family. In others, the focus shifted to conflict, passion, and tragedy, highlighting the disruptive potential of love and desire. This variability reveals the dynamic nature of mythic storytelling and its capacity to adapt to changing social contexts while preserving core themes. You might notice how the tension between idealization and realism plays out in these artistic and literary works. While goddesses were often depicted as paragons of beauty, wisdom, or virtue, their marriages exposed vulnerabilities and contradictions that made them relatable and human-like. This blend of divinity and humanity enriched the narratives, allowing audiences to engage emotionally and intellectually with the myths. Some artworks also explored the symbolic aspects of goddess marriages, using imagery such as wedding processions, sacred animals, or natural elements to convey deeper meanings. For example, the presence of pomegranates, doves, or flames in a scene could evoke fertility, love, or eternal flame, linking visual motifs to mythic themes. These symbolic languages added layers of interpretation, inviting viewers to contemplate the mysteries of divine unions beyond their surface narratives. The influence of goddess marriage stories extended beyond ancient Greece, inspiring artists and writers throughout history and into modern times. Renaissance painters reimagined scenes of divine love and conflict with new styles and perspectives, while contemporary literature and media continued to draw on these rich mythic traditions. This ongoing artistic dialogue underscores the enduring power of goddess marriages as sources of inspiration and reflection. As you immerse yourself in the artistic and literary worlds shaped by these myths, you may feel a deeper connection to the timeless human experiences they encode. The visual and verbal portrayals of goddess marriages invite you to explore the complexities of love, power, and identity, reminding you that these ancient stories continue to resonate in our own lives and cultures. Ultimately, the art and literature of goddess marriages enrich the mythic landscape, preserving and transforming divine dramas into expressions of universal themes. They offer a window into how ancient peoples understood their gods and themselves, weaving stories that continue to illuminate the intricate dance of love and power. The echoes of Greek goddess marriages ripple far beyond ancient temples and classical texts, resonating deeply within modern culture's stories, art, and understanding of relationships. You can almost trace the delicate threads of these divine unions winding through contemporary novels, films, and even psychology. Their themes both timeless and profoundly relevant. The dramas of passion, jealousy, power struggles, and transformation that characterize these marriages continue to captivate and inform modern narratives, suggesting that the terrible nature of these unions reflects enduring truths about love's complexity, rather than mere mythic exaggeration. This lasting influence invites reflection on how ancient stories shape our collective imagination and personal experiences of relationship dynamics today. Take, for example, the archetypal figure of Hera, the jealous queen whose wrath and protectiveness have inspired countless portrayals of the scorned wife, or the powerful, vengeful woman in literature and media. Her story resonates in modern narratives exploring themes of betrayal, resilience, and female agency. These portrayals often grapple with the tensions Hera embodied: fierce loyalty and destructive jealousy, vulnerability and formidable strength. The archetype endures because it captures essential aspects of human relationships, especially the complexities and contradictions inherent in love and power. You might recognize aspects of this archetype in contemporary characters who embody both maternal protectiveness and formidable independence. Similarly, Aphrodite's influence extends into modern concepts of beauty, desire, and the tumultuous nature of passion. Her narratives about love's unpredictability and the interplay between attraction and chaos inform contemporary understandings of romantic relationships, sexuality, and emotional complexity. The goddess's embodiment of both creative and destructive forces echoes in stories that explore the risks and rewards of intimacy. This duality continues to inspire artists, writers, and psychologists who delve into the paradoxes of human desire. Her mythic image endures as a symbol of love's power to enchant and unsettle, to build up and break down. Persephone's tale, with its themes of transformation and duality, finds new life in modern explorations of identity, change, and the cyclical nature of life. Her story is often invoked in discussions about personal growth, trauma, and renewal, reflecting the ongoing human experience of navigating darkness and light. In literature and psychology, Persephone represents the journey through loss and the emergence into new understanding, offering hope amid hardship. This enduring relevance highlights how ancient goddess marriages continue to provide frameworks for interpreting the complexities of human existence. The virgin goddesses, Artemis and Athena, also maintain significant cultural presence as symbols of female independence, strength, and wisdom. Their narratives challenge traditional notions of femininity and relationship, inspiring modern movements that celebrate autonomy and self-determination. These goddesses embody ideals of empowerment that resonate with contemporary discussions about gender roles and personal agency. Their stories offer alternative models of womanhood, expanding the possibilities of identity beyond romantic or marital status. Moreover, the themes of jealousy, betrayal, and revenge found in goddess marriages continue to permeate modern storytelling. These motifs appear in everything from soap operas to epic fantasy series, reflecting the universal human fascination with the darker sides of love and power. The mythic narratives provide rich source material for exploring emotional depth and moral ambiguity, allowing audiences to engage with the complexities of relationships in nuanced ways. You might notice how these themes invite both empathy and caution, prompting reflection on the consequences of passion and conflict. The symbolic and allegorical aspects of divine marriages also find echoes in contemporary spiritual and psychological thought. Jungian archetypes, for instance, draw heavily on mythic figures like the Greek goddesses to represent inner psychological dynamics, including the anima, the mother, the maiden, and the temptress. These archetypes inform modern understandings of the self and relationships, highlighting how ancient myths continue to shape personal and collective consciousness. This psychological legacy underscores the enduring power of goddess marriages as metaphors for internal and external experiences. In popular culture, adaptations of Greek myths, whether in movies, books, or video games, often reinterpret goddess marriages to suit contemporary tastes and sensibilities. These retellings explore new dimensions of the myths, sometimes emphasizing themes of empowerment, consent, and complexity previously underplayed. Such adaptations demonstrate the flexibility and resilience of these stories, showing how ancient narratives can be reshaped to address modern concerns while retaining their mythic core. You might feel a sense of continuity as you observe these threads connecting past and present, realizing that the terrible nature of goddess marriages reflects not failure but profound exploration of the multifaceted nature of love and power. Their stories remind us that relationships are rarely simple or perfect, but always deeply human in their contradictions and transformations. Ultimately, the influence of Greek goddess marriages on modern culture highlights the timelessness of these myths and their capacity to illuminate enduring aspects of the human condition. Their narratives continue to inspire, challenge, and comfort, offering mirrors in which we see our own struggles and triumphs in love, identity, and connection. As your mind settles into the quiet rhythm of these ancient tales, the stories of goddess marriages invite you to a gentle reflection on love, power, and peace that transcends time and turmoil. The dramas, the jealousies, the betrayals, all the tangled webs woven by Hera, Aphrodite, Demeter, Artemis, Athena, and the others, while vivid and tumultuous, gradually dissolve into softer shadows, revealing not just conflict, but also the enduring human yearning for connection and harmony. Imagine the flickering flames of a hearth, steady and warm, casting dancing light on the walls, as the divine struggles fade into the background noise of existence. These myths, with all their intensity, whisper to you about the complexity of relationships, the price of power, and the quiet grace found in acceptance. The terrible nature of these divine marriages is not simply a tale of failure or discord. It is a profound meditation on the human condition, mirrored in the lives of gods and mortals alike. Their unions, with all their flaws and passions, encapsulate the contradictions of love, joy, and sorrow, freedom and constraint, creation and destruction. Yet, beyond the chaos lies a deeper truth, the possibility of transformation through suffering, the cycle of loss and renewal that shapes all existence. As you listen softly, you might feel a tender compassion for these goddesses, whose stories reflect both the light and shadow within yourself. There's a quiet power in recognizing that even divine beings struggle with the messy realities of relationships, that jealousy, betrayal, and longing are universal experiences. This shared vulnerability bridges the gap between mortal and immortal, reminding you that connection requires courage, patience, and sometimes acceptance of imperfection. The goddesses' tales gently urge you to embrace the complexities of your own relationships, to find peace not in perfection but in understanding and grace. The myths also highlight the importance of autonomy and selfhood amid partnership. Figures like Artemis and Athena embody the strength found in independence and commitment to higher ideals, showing that love need not demand surrender, but can coexist with personal integrity. Their stories offer a soothing balm, a reminder that peace within oneself is a foundation for all relationships. As you breathe deeply, you might sense the calm that arises from balancing connection with individuality, motherhood, and nurturing. As exemplified by Demeter and Hestia, offer another layer of quiet strength and continuity. Their roles remind you that love takes many forms, and that the bonds of care and protection are as sacred as romantic union. The hearthfire's steady glow and the earth's fertile cycles symbolize the enduring rhythms that sustain life. Grounding you in the flow of time and nature, this grounding invites a sense of belonging and calm amidst life's changes. As the stories fade softly, you may notice how the divine struggles reflect your own inner dances, the desires and fears, the wounds and hopes that shape your journey. The myths become gentle companions, holding space for reflection without judgment, inviting healing through awareness. Their whispers blend with the soft background hum of your surroundings, creating a lullaby for the heart and mind. In this serene moment, the tales of goddess marriages transform from tales of chaos into meditations on balance between passion and peace, self and other, loss and renewal. They encourage you to release expectations of perfection and to embrace the fullness of love with its mysteries and challenges. This acceptance opens the door to compassion for yourself and others, softening the edges of pain and fostering gentle understanding. Now, as you prepare to rest, let the images of Olympus fade into a peaceful nightscape, stars twinkling with quiet light, the eternal dance of the cosmos unfolding beyond sight. Feel the steady flame of the hearth within you, a source of warmth and calm, connecting you to the ancient rhythms of life. Let go of worries and tensions, allowing the whispers of myth and the gentle cadence of your breath to carry you toward restful sleep. May the stories you have heard tonight linger softly in your dreams, offering insights and comfort, and may you awaken with a heart lighter and more open. Remember that love's complexity is part of its beauty, and that peace is found not in absence of struggle, but in embracing the journey with grace. Thank you for sharing this quiet passage through the lives of goddesses and their marriages. May your night be calm, your dreams gentle, and your heart at ease.